I'm not dead. Hey everyone, my name is William for 222 Productions, and this is it. We're talking about the final episode of American Ninja Warrior Season 12. So let's get right into it. But first, I'm going to start things off with the comment question of the week. That's right, we're starting with the comment question, and this is why. I want to know from you guys in the comments down below, what did you think of the season? And also, more importantly, what did you think of the format of this season? What would you have changed? And if we have to use this format again for season 13, what changes do you think they should make for season 13? Let me know in the comments down below. But we have reached the finale, the grand finale, part 2 of the finals. The remaining competitors all took to the 10-part final obstacle course. I was surprised by the results because I was of the opinion that this course was overall easier than the semifinal course, but the semifinals ended up having more clears than the finals, which was a bit odd. I guess people weren't prepared for some of the obstacles that they were taken out on. But I was doing some thinking, listening to what some other people had said already, and I do agree that it would be nice if this course was more akin to a stage 3. Like a Vegas stage 3, you know, like the fact that there was no cliffhanger was very disappointing. And if it wasn't for the power tower at the very end, we would have gone the entire season without seeing the cliffhanger. And that's like something you gotta have on a ninja course, quite frankly, is a cliffhanger. So it is what it is, but unfortunately, I'm willing to give them a big pass for a lot of stuff just because I feel like their hands were kind of tied when it came to obstacles. I have a feeling that the Vegas obstacles, they weren't designed to be fit into those water tanks that, you know, we're used to seeing in the qualifiers and regionals and all that stuff. And as a result, they could only use the obstacles they had already built. Like, I know for a fact, because photos were shared with me, some of the obstacles that we saw this season were a part of the LA course this year. I remember Corkscrew was one of the obstacles. And I imagine that a lot of the new obstacles that we saw this season were stuff that we were going to see during the normal A&W 12. Like, I'm pretty sure Ring Chaser was part of the original LA course too. And I also saw photos of the power tower, and it had that cliffhanger that we eventually end up seeing at the end of the episode. And it also had a devil step. Instead of the pole climb section, it had a devil step. I wish they included that part too. I think that would have been nice to see for the finale. But overall, this was a fine episode, but I feel like it kind of highlighted some of the issues that I had with this season, especially towards the end. And I feel like the extending it an extra week made me notice some of the additional flaws of this season as a whole. So, first things first, I just want to say that intro it was just terrible. I hate it. I hate their A&W's usual choice of music for their intros for each episode. I think it's just way too slow. The slow inspirational stuff, it's not exciting. You want to get people excited for your show, man. You know? You think Survivor uses like slow dramatic music? It's like, no, when you watch Survivor, it's like, previously on Survivor. Then it's like, oh, that's the kind of music that you get on Survivor. And, you know, of course, their intro, you know, with the tribal chanting and stuff. American Ninja Warrior, like I've said this before, the bizarre thing American Ninja Warrior is that it doesn't have an intro song. There is no it's a different song every week, and then it cuts into the logo, and usually the songs are pretty crap. This was no exception. But there was one thing that I noticed with this intro, is that it actually included Jody Avila winning the Power Tower. It showed the very end of his Power Tower from episode 1 that was cut, him pressing the button and winning. And I noticed that this because there was no Drew in that shot. So I'm guessing Drew fell, so they were able to show that shot. This wouldn't be the first time that a previous segment that was cut due to the presence of Drew Drechsel was included in this episode. We'll get to that when we get to it. But that was one of the things that I noticed. So first up they showed was Jeshua Lewis. They mentioned that him and his family, they live in an RV. They're always going to the A&W tapings. I think that was a cool little thing. He had a very close call on the Diamond Dash, but his left hand missed the second ball of Slam Dunk, and he ended up falling. It didn't help that he hit his head on one of the cradles for the balls. And it turns out we actually had a pretty appropriate foreshadowing in that you had Joe Marowski, who was on the same team as Jeshua, say, "Oh man, I can't believe he fell there. Took out such a strong competitor. That could take out anyone." It's like, that was good on the editors to include that in there. Then they showed David Wright, and it mainly focused on him and Amir Malik. I felt like this intro went very long, especially because we've seen the cake thing a few times already this season. So I was just thinking, like, maybe it'd be nice if, they cut it a little short. Anyway, he was looking good until the falling shelves. He ended up missing the third shelf and falling. So that, unfortunate for him. Then the next segment was featured Amir Malik. They mentioned that there's very few representation from Vermont, and he's only 5'5". He ended up going down on the Dragonback. What did I write here? He overshot. When going up the steps, he overshot the final step and immediately went on the ramp part, which caused him to get twisted, and he fell down on the obstacle. However, what is key here is that he went fast enough to slot himself into 5th place at that time. And this is I actually really appreciate A&W doing, is that every time someone got into the top 8, they updated the leaderboard, informing us of who got knocked out. That's actually one of the things that I was hoping to see this episode, and A&W delivered on that. So I have to say, good job on A&W for doing that. And so I think they did a good job with that. I would have liked to have seen them putting up, for everyone's run, putting up the clock and saying, like, the minimum that they have to do in order to get into the top 8 leaderboard. I think that would have been nice to see, because this is the frustrating thing about A&W this past couple of seasons, is how they've not really been using the clock as much. They haven't been putting the clock on screen when they used to have it on the screen for everyone, and it's for a season where being in the top 8 is more important than ever in this episode, specifically. It was a little frustrating that, you didn't have the clock on the screen for a lot of the competitors. It would have been really nice to see that, in my opinion. But it is what it is. And then the only fast forward of the entire finals was John Alexis Jr. Now, on one hand, I'm like, okay, it was nice that they actually acknowledged him, unlike this entire season. But, like, the only person who didn't get mentioned in the finals is Drew, and that's understandable. But of everyone who hasn't been arrested for a horrible crime, the only person who got fast forward was John Alexis. And I'm just like, what did this guy do? The only acceptable solution is if it turns out like Drew was on his sideline the entire time. Although that wouldn't make entire sense, because like he wasn't on the same team as Drew. And like the thing I don't understand is that like you could have at least shown him in fast forward segments and edit around Drew, because you've edited around Drew with other competitors this season. You could have done the guy. I don't know. They did John dirty this season. But unfortunately, he ended up going out on Slam Dunk, which is not good enough to get into the top 8 at this point, so he's out. And then they showed Daniel Gill. He's looking for a home, man. He's ready. He's competing because he wants to buy a new home for him and his wife. They want to start a family. And then his wife mentioned that they want 6 kids, and immediately I was like, "Whoa, 6? That's a lot. That's a lot of work to produce and raise 6 kids. You don't see that a lot these days." But hey, you know what? If you're ready to do it, again, go for it. I'm just saying, after the first one, maybe you should reassess. Reassess if you're ready for 6 after having the first one. Daniel, simply put, he's so good on the course overall. He ended up clearing with a time of 4 minutes 12.68 seconds, which at the time puts him into first place. Just very impressive overall. Then up next was Thomas Stillings, my boy. One of my boys. They did a recap with his wife Zoe, and Thomas, I know you're probably going to watch this. I gotta say, it felt a little long. The promo package felt a little long because it felt like a lot of just rehashing from what we already knew, and I feel like if your profile is mostly just rehashing or reminding the audience, you can cut it shorter. You can absolutely cut it shorter, but it's not your fault. It's just, it is what it is. Unfortunately, he got hung up on the falling shelves. Basically, to my understanding, they had a rule where you weren't allowed to grab both shelves at the same time. And in the case of Thomas, what he was doing is that the way he laches is he goes one hand. It's not like a uniform like lache like this. It's like a whoof whoof sort of thing. But because the shelves were closer than he expected, he reached out and it was accidentally grabbing both at the same time. And it was like, oh, whoops, gotta go back. And unfortunately, he missed when he tried to do it in the proper style. I'm not a fan of them adding all these extra rules, but, it is what it is. Then they showed R.J. Roman, a feature about his grandma, how basically supportive she's been, sometimes giving her a heart attack with the stunts that he would do. And then, interestingly enough, they showed one of the skills competition events that they cut from this All-Star special in this episode. It was the Twist and Fly event. I forget what the actual name was called, but basically the Drew was in that event, so they cut it. In fact, Drew won that event, so there was no chance in hell they were going to show it. But RJ competed. They actually showed him competing in it, and it was interesting when they used footage that they cut due to crimes. But RJ, I mentioned before, RJ was my dark horse, and they started him mid-run, which immediately I'm like, already hesitant. And unfortunately, he went out on the dragon back, he went crooked on the second track. At the time of the episode, he was slotted into 7th place, but wasn't looking good. Then they were showing Jessie Graff was up next, and they one of the things that they mentioned is how she has never beaten a 10 obstacle course, the finals style course, the extended course as they like to call it, and she was really hoping to do it. Unfortunately, she went out on the second flying shelf actually, and when she did it, you immediately audibly heard her yell. And for those of you who are unaware, she hurt her shoulder. She hurt her shoulder. If you follow her on Instagram, you'll know that shortly after the taping of American Ninja Warrior, she got surgery on her shoulder. She also got surgery on her knee, and just recently, as of now, right before, she got surgery on her other shoulder. So unfortunately, she's had a lot of surgery to be done, and the knee was sustained in the women's special that has not aired yet. Will hopefully be aired sometime. I'm guessing January-ish. That's my guess. But yeah, unfortunately, she hurt her shoulder. That was the moment that she injured her shoulder and had to get surgery for. So unfortunately, a very painful end of the season for Jessie. Hopefully, she makes a full recovery. It seems like she's dedicated to her rehab, but it seems like, unfortunately, in her line of work as a stunt woman, injuries happen. I remember, earlier this year, she's talked about some injuries when she was competing in UNX and stuff like that. So it's been a rough go. It's been a rough go for Jessie this past year. Wishing her a full recovery. Then they featured Adam Rail, mentioned how he has Blaine Wilson, Olympic gymnast, watching him, how Blaine was his hero, and now Blaine's kids are fans of him, and how cool that is. They started him midway at the, I wrote 4, so Diamond Dash. He ended up clearing at a time of 6:24, which slots him into 4th place currently. And then they showed Jake Murray. And they showed him competing in various ninja comps around the country, because he's been very busy. I know they showed Ultimate Backyard Warrior, but to my surprise, they also showed UNX, which had the full UNX logo on the screen, which that caught me off guard. What's this? He gave me. Spring Forward, right? Yeah, he had a very surprising close call on Spring Forward early on. Just didn't get a proper launch, and he had to do a little extra extension to make sure he grabbed one of the next handlebars. But other than that, he did pretty darn well. He ended up finishing with a time of 3:56, less than 4 minutes, and this actually gave Jake Murray the distinction of being the only person in this season to have the fastest time in his qualifier, the fastest time in his semifinal, and the fastest time in the finals. He took 1st place in all 3 rounds he competed in. This is why Jake was my pick to win, because I knew that Jake Murray is a very good ninja. Perhaps better than I think people give him credit for, because they probably see him more as, the fun-loving, jokey guy. No. When Jake is good, Jake is good. He is damn good. And then, last but not least, was Joe Marowski. They mentioned that he needs the money because he's having a son, a 3rd kid, a son. Oh, happy days for the Marowski family. And there was something about this run when it started. I'm just like, I got this funny feeling. Something's about to happen. And I do like the way they set it up. They showed, because it was the last run, they showed Amir Malik on the bubble. And Joe, which I'm sure was a surprise to everyone, he fell on slam dunk. Similar to Jeshua, he just misplaced the handles on the second ball, and he was eliminated. And much to Amir's benefit and delight, I did like that they showed Joe telling Malik to go get the money, go get him. I do wonder if, how fair slam dunk is, now that I've had the chance to think about it. It's been a year. Just the way that he grabs the ball and stuff, the way that you have to grab the ball. I wonder if it's certain hand types are at disadvantage. Basically, the bigger fingered people, hard to get your fingers in there, because you got to be very precise. But the top 8 is now set. So going from 1st to 8th place. In 1st place was Jake Murray, followed by Daniel Gill, Najee Richardson, Lucas Reale, Austin Gray, Adam Rail, and 7th place was Jess Lebrecht. They all cleared, and coming in 8th place was Amir Malik, who failed the Dragonback, but reached it faster than anyone else who failed the Dragonback. So he was the lone rookie in the top 8. The way they did the grand finale was a single elimination tournament at the Power Tower. They were seeded based on their times on the finals course, which is the most fair way to do it, honestly. And I was one of the things I was thinking about, maybe if they have to do this again, is I was thinking maybe what they can do for next year is they have a rule where in order to get to the Power Tower tournament, you have to clear the finals course. And it doesn't matter how many people clear, you have to do it if you want the $100,000. Now, I realize they probably will never do this just because they don't want a situation where only one person clears and then there's no Power Tower. But I was thinking, like, because they were talking about you want to clear with the faster time because then you get a higher seed, but the reality is it doesn't matter because the seeding is only based on one performance. It's not based on overall skill. It's not based on like their career of what they predict as, who the best competitors are. It's based on one performance. And so for example, Adam Rail being number 6 of those 8 people, is he really the 6th best ninja? I don't know. It's hard to argue. But so it really doesn't matter. Like, I'm glad that they did it that way just because it's the only way you can do it fairly outside of doing a completely random draw. But I feel like if you do it in a random draw, you could get accused of shenanigans. This way, there's no accusation of shenanigans. It's based on the performance. But I was thinking, if you want to make the times matter even more, have it be that if in order to get into the finals tournament, you have to clear the course. That way, for example, if only 7 people clear, Jake Murray, who was the number 1 seed, gets a bye. And then that is an actual advantage into getting into first place. Alternatively, let's say there's 9 people who clear, then you would have a situation where seeds 8 and 9 will have to win an extra round. Instead of having to win 3 matches, they have to win 4 matches because they were the 8th and 9th seed. So again, that gives an advantage to the other 7 players. That's just kind of how I see it, honestly. I think that would be like a fun way to spice things up. You just, like I said before, you have the issue of what happens if very few people clear the course. If only 3 or God forbid 1 person clears, it's kind of ruins the whole Power Tower feel. You could say that top 8, what you could do is top 8 moves on, but if you clear the course, you're guaranteed to move on, but the seeding gets you higher seeds, gets a better advantage because then, you don't have to compete in as many rounds. Something like that, but that's just me spitballing, I will say I was slightly disappointed that they reused the same Power Tower from the qualifier round for the first round of the tournament. I would have liked to have seen them use the modified version right away, but it is what it is. So, first up, they showed Najee Richardson and Austin Gray. Najee number 4, Austin Gray number 5. This was a really good race. Basically, it came down to a tenth of a second. Austin Gray beating Najee Richardson. It caught me by surprise. Very surprised by that. And one thing I will say, the green screen rotating stage thing of them staring each other down, not a fan of that. I think it looks really... I don't think the green screen effect very, very much worked at all. I just looked and like, oh, that's so cheesy. That's so rough looking. Wasn't a fan of that. Then number 3 seed Lucas Reale versus number 6 Adam Rail. So bad. Felt so bad for Lucas. I'm sorry. Sorry, Lucas, my good friend. But unfortunately, Adam just had the lead and kept the lead and had a pretty darn good lead the entire time. And he ended up easily winning and moving on to the semifinals. And then the number 1 seed, Jake Murray, took on the rookie, number 8, Amir Malik. And holy cow, Amir was so fast. I was not prepared for this because Jake is pretty fast himself. But much to my surprise, Amir beat Jake Murray. Holy crap. Was not seeing that coming. And one of the things that I really want to mention is that one of the things that I noticed is that if you go all the way back to episode 2 with Jake Murray and Ethan Swanson doing the Power Tower, you'll notice that in the falling shelves, they were going hand over hand to each shelf. And then starting with episode 3, and in these Power Towers as well, you notice that in the with the shelf section, they were forced to do a lache to each one. They weren't allowed to go hand over hand, and it's very obvious that the producer said you're not allowed to go hand over hand anymore. Because why would Jake Murray do a different strategy on the falling shelves unless he wasn't allowed to do it? It was super obvious, and I'm not a fan, especially when you're in just a straight up head-to-head race. I'm not a fan of the producers saying, "Oh, you have to do these obstacles in a very specific way." To me, it's like you should have just used 3 shelves and just space them out more. Force them to do bigger jumps. But it is what it is, and unfortunately, that's what they went with. But I'm not a fan of when AEW adds these arbitrary rules. It's super obvious that's what they did. You just gotta look. You just gotta watch the screen and pay attention. And it's obvious that's what they did. And so I would have preferred if they just went with 3 shelves and told them that they can't, and told them, do the lache thing. Instead of telling them to do the lache thing. Oh, God, I'm all tongue-tied because I was a bit annoyed by this, what transpired. And so the final quarterfinal match was between Daniel Gill and Jesse Graff. And I gotta say, I really think Akbar did a poor job with the commentary of this match, because I feel like the commentators, when it comes to these head-to-head stuff, they really should be impartial. And honestly, from my point of view, it really felt like Akbar wanted Jessie to win. It felt like, because she fell behind early on in the climb the steps part, and it felt like Akbar was like, "Oh no, it's okay, you can still catch up," and stuff like that. It's like, come on, man, you're supposed to be impartial. So, yeah, unfortunately for Jessie, Daniel got the lead, kept the lead, and won. But anyway, semi-final time. At this point, I was rooting for Amir to win. I'm going to be honest. Just because I think it's really cool if a rookie was to come in and win the $100,000. I think that's a great story. I think that's an unexpected but pleasant surprise. And I was rooting for the kid. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Show yourself. That's great. I've seen people in the past who have said that, I don't, when it comes to either A&W proper or with this format, it's I don't want to see some sort of rookie all of a sudden just show up and win. I want to see some kind of, I want to see this veteran that I've invested all this time in after all these seasons go and win. And I say, screw that. I'm all in favor, it doesn't have to be a veteran. This idea that for the sake of the show it has to be a veteran, no, it should be a rookie is just as viable as a veteran when it comes to seeing who wins. I think a rookie winning this season would have been so good as far as an ending, because what talk about an underdog Cinderella story. Someone that no one expected, all of a sudden just going bam, 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 beating some of the best in the world. That would have been great. Also, there's a little part of me that would have liked to have seen it, because then Bijan from our Channel Ninja podcast would have been annoyed by it. But what can I say? Love you, Bijan. Just teasing. Just teasing. But anyway, we got ourselves the semifinals, round one, Austin Gray versus Amir Malik. And they did okay, so this is something I have to criticize A&W for because holy crap, this was bad. They did a tail of the tape matching up the two competitors, their stats, their heights and weights and stuff like that. And I'm just like, holy crap, guys. Could you have made the font any smaller? I feel like that meme from Community where Dr. Ken is like holding up the little piece of paper, is like, I can't see it. I'm just like, holy crap, guys. Have you never seen UFC or boxing when they do tail of the tapes? Or even WWE, part of the NBC Universal family. Like, you gotta do columns, man. You gotta do columns. That was pathetic. And honestly, like, one of the other issues is that when you look at the leaderboard, it says the person's name, but then when it says how well they did, it's so small also. It's so small underneath them. There's not a very clear indication of how they did. It's like, guys, I'm watching this on a big screen HD TV, and I was having difficulty reading those stats. That was unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Get your crap together and make some decent graphics next time you want to do a tail of the tape situation. So in the match between Austin Gray versus Amir Malik, I was really hoping that Amir was going to pull it out in the end, but unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Austin took the lead, and Amir, in an attempt to catch up on the shelves, ended up falling, and Austin hit the button and got the win. So Austin, much to my surprise, moved on to the grand finals. The reason it was much to my surprise is because, like I mentioned last week, they hadn't really featured him all season, and now all of a sudden he's in the top 2 for the season, which I found very bizarre. But then we go on to the other semifinal match between Daniel Gill and Adam Rail. It was so darn close between these two. It could have gone either way. Daniel ended up just edging out Adam. Oh, so very close. Adam actually ended up destroying his buzzer, diving through it, diving through the pole and destroying it. So I imagine they had to take some time. The other thing that I should probably mention when it comes to the semifinals is that they changed the course. They changed the Power Tower course. They took out the steps and they replaced them with some cliffhanger ledges. Didn't look like anything that was like too difficult, but some more like a speed cliffhanger ledges. But it was nice seeing a change. I would have liked them to put those devil steps that I've seen in photos, but also feel like that would have made things a little more difficult, but it is what it is, I guess. So, in the grand finale, it came down between Daniel Gill and Austin Gray. So, at this point, I'm like, well, I wonder who's going to win. Daniel Gill, the guy that they've been featuring all season and been focusing on and putting in a positive light, or Austin Gray, the guy who got fast forward the first 2 rounds and only got a full featured until the finals in episode 7. I wonder who's going to win. And then I thought to myself, I mean, surely Daniel's winning, right? Like, they wouldn't be so stupid as to not feature the guy who won the entire season. And then the race started, and Austin had the lead early on, in which my mouth dropped. Because at that point in time, I thought Austin was about to win. And I'm just like, holy crap. Did they really do that? Is he seriously about to win? But no. Daniel was able to catch up in the end. He won. He wins the $100,000 and is crowned the season champion. I guess it's going to be a weird title because, like, he shouldn't be on the same level as, like, Isaac and Jeff in terms of A&W champion because his accomplishment is way different than what they accomplished, not quite the same thing. Not quite the same thing. So I found it very odd that at the same time they had to call, you got to call him a champion. He's the season champion, as long as they quantify it that it's a different type of champion from clearing all 4 stages of Midoriyama, I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But overall, this season, having a very strange ending, I think kind of caps off what is ultimately a very strange season. Like I said before, the fact that it came down to Daniel Gill and Austin Gray, and the fact that only one of them had been prominently featured all season was ridiculous. It was absurd that they didn't feature Austin Gray more of this season. They knew. It's not like this... and here's the thing. It's not like this season started airing before they finished taping all of it, and they didn't... And Austin's episode aired before they knew he was going to, finish in second place. The entire season was done. So, unless the reasoning is Drew, there is no excuse for why they skipped him so much. They fast-forwarded him in both the first 2 rounds. And, again, Austin, I know you watch these videos, man. They did you dirty. I would have put a lot more stock into you in doing well in the semis and finals if they had actually, featured you. But usually when people don't get featured, it's a sign that they're not going to do well later on in the season, even though they did well earlier on. But apparently getting second place overall is not good enough to get featured for the entire season. I guess this is the annoying part of A&W, where they're like, oh hey, we're going to feature who we want to feature, who we want to showcase. Damn the results. And that was frustrating. So on a whole, my thoughts for the season on the whole. I went into it with low expectations because I knew the situation. I knew that they had to cancel the season, the normal season, because of COVID. They were able to hobble together this, this truncated version, this, very smaller, A&W Light, really, is what it really is. Let's be honest, it's A&W Light. And I know people would have expected more some bigger obstacles, maybe some Vegas-esque stuff, but similar to how they do it in Ninja Warrior UK and the other European shows. But again, I think it's unfair to them just because they probably didn't have time to make new obstacles because they were required to, stay separated. I'm pretty sure ATS's headquarters is in California, and they've been extra strict with the lockdown stuff. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they had to hobble, they had to mesh together a season based on the obstacles that they already had. There was definitely other obstacles they probably had that they could have used, but then there was the other thing where it's like they had a limited filming schedule, and so they can only swap out certain obstacles, and there was a lot of limitations, And so for a lot of the stuff that I would say is a negative of this season, I'm willing to give them a pass just because it was relatively short notice. It was, they didn't have access to a lot of the stuff that they probably would have been able to do if they knew they were doing this format much further ahead of time. So I give them a pass on a lot of that stuff. And even though I had a lot of issues with the editing, I do give them a pass on certain aspects of it just because, unfortunately Drew happened. And by the way, I didn't want to say this ahead of time, but if you want to know what happened to Drew, he failed Dragon Back, and he was not fast enough to get into the top 8. And honestly, for the sake of A&W, thank God he didn't make it into the top 8, because I don't know what they have done. First off, could you imagine if he won this season? If Drew Drescher was the winner of this season would have never have aired. We would have never have seen it. Never would have seen it. It would have been thrown out. Because how do you edit that? How do you edit that out? You can't. They were able to get around not showing the Power Tower in episode 1, even though it was really awkward when, they introduced it in episode 2 instead of episode 1. And so it's I forgive them for a lot of stuff because they had to do a lot of things to edit around Drew, I imagine. Every time he was on someone's camera or on their sidelines, they had to edit around that, and I'm sure that was a pain in the ass for the editors. So I do give them a lot of credit. I wish they had found a way to feature Austin Gray more in order for basically the finals to not be a foregone conclusion that Daniel was going to win. But this season, it was, this isn't the worst season of A&W I've ever seen. I still maintain 6 is the worst. Just on a personal level, I feel like 6 is the worst. But it's nowhere near the best by any stretch of the imagination. So it is what it is. It's ultimately a forgettable season. It's a season that existed. Unfortunately, the ratings were just way down from last season, by 2 million viewers in some cases. and so I am hopeful that this will not hurt the show. They're already calling for casting for season 13, so I'm hopeful. I imagine NBC is going to call this essentially a wash for the season. It's like they need to get something out there, but they're in a situation where they were limited what they can do because of COVID, and then you had just this giant mess of production because they had to delay the season because of Drew, then they had to delay the show mid-season by a week because of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then this episode was supposed to air on Wednesday, but it got pushed back to Friday because of election coverage, because some states apparently just can't count their ballots fast enough, and so we were left in this situation where NBC, and also just the time change, by episode 6, the show moved from Mondays to Wednesdays, and time changes are usually never good for a show. And so you have this situation where it's moving all around, it's getting delayed, it's not getting delayed, and all this stuff. It got delayed multiple times, and you had this weird format. Ultimately, what I can say is that they did their best. I give them a pass. I give them an A for effort to the producers. I hope that they take the time to really sit down and think, how can we improve the show? Because I really hope they don't look at the numbers and just say, oh, the numbers are down because of COVID. Because they're not. They're not down because of COVID. If anything, COVID was just a catalyst to speed up the decline in ratings. But ratings have been going down for a while now. And I hope that they really use it to mix things up for season 13. Make the show more exciting. I think that's the biggest thing that they need to do. And I feel like that's a topic for a future video, if I choose to make it. Maybe I won't. But I think they need to mix things up, because it's kind of been the same formula for a while. And I will say that in the end, this season did feel kind of samey. I think ultimately, that's sort of the biggest issue, is that at the end of the day, because there's no Vegas finals at the end, the entire season felt like the same thing in the end. It's the same course for the most part. Most of the you look at the finals, most of the obstacles we've already seen early in the season. We have the shrinking steps, spring forward, warped wall, salmon ladder, and spider trap. All obstacles that we saw in the semifinals, at least one of the two semifinals. So that's half the course we've already seen. And then you have just actually, wait a minute, what am I talking about? Yeah, okay. So I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought Slingshot was in this too. No, it was Spin Hopper. But basically, half the course we had already seen this season. And I really think it would have been nice if for the finals they busted out the invisible ladder or the elevator climb. Maybe they didn't want to make the course too difficult in that regard, but it would have been nice. It would have been really nice to see. But I think, especially if they have to do season 13 the same format. because of, COVID restrictions are still too tight on them. It's really just going to depend on what 2021 looks like, I don't know how much better COVID situation is going to get. Like, maybe we'll have a vaccine, but will a lot of people be vaccinated? Will we be able, will we be forced to socially distance still? Probably, to be perfectly honest. I doubt I'll be able to go into the audience for A&W in season 13. I seriously doubt it. And so I think they really need to use this time to think about how they can improve the format of the show. And I hope they do. And I really hope they do. But in the end, show's over. Season's over. We're done. No more Ninja Warrior until they air the women's episode. To my understanding, they only filmed one special, which means no USA versus the world this year. Thank God. If there was any good news to come out from this season, is that there is no USA versus the world. Hooray! But until they eventually air the women's special, I'll be posting other videos in the meantime of covering Ninja Warrior, Sasuke, and maybe even some other shows in between. And I hope you'll stick around to watch that stuff, because I always enjoy talking about these topics, and I hope that you enjoy listening to me talk about these topics. But that is all from me. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to know when new videos go live, and I'll see you all next time. Later.